Let's speak a little bit about Day 9's proceedings. It was a very interesting day. Colonel van Rensburg walked us through the crime scene as he got there.
Yes, absolutely. And you'll recall that obviously we're now into the forensic aspect of the case. And I think that should all be dealt with together. You know, it's no good the prosecutor leading witnesses haphazardly because the judge doesn't know which witness is going to come next and, in fact, what the witnesses are going to say. And I think this is something that must be highlighted. The prosecutor knows what the witnesses are going to be saying, and so does the defense on their statements. They may differ in court. Their statements may be contradicted, but they have an idea of what the witnesses are going to say because they've been given all the evidence in advance. The judge does not have that. So the judge hears it for the first time in court. So how a case should be dealt with is chronologically and try and lead, in other words, all your members of the public, your other witnesses, sort of together, depending on their availability, obviously, and then the forensic evidence kind of together as well. Also depending on the forensic evidence, those witnesses' availability. Now, so we had the evidence of Vermeulen dealing with the cricket bat and that whole scenario, the issue whether or not Oscar was on his prosthetic limbs at the time that the cricket bat was wielded or not. You will recall that he'd indicated he'd been on his stumps initially, and then he'd gone back and he'd put on his prosthetic limbs, and that's how he was when he hit the door of the cricket bat. So we had all of that evidence, and then we have ex-Colonel van Rensburg, I believe he's now retired or he's moved into some other field, arriving, telling us about his arrival at the home and describing the blood splatters throughout the home. And that is indicative of the fact that Oscar, on his own version, says that he picked up Reva and carried her downstairs. Now, the blood splatters in some cases might be very, very significant to prove the state's case. In this instance, I'm not sure whether they are, in fact, because it's not disputed that Oscar picked her up and carried her down. And obviously, if you're carrying a body down that's bleeding profusely, you're going to have blood splatters. So in some cases, it could be very significant to try and prove the case against somebody. And in other instances, like Oscar's, maybe it is not really significant, but you do need evidence about the arrival of the first police officers, what the home looks like, and those sort of graphics are then obviously shown to the court, and the van Rensburg is taking the court through all of that. And in my mind, what is quite interesting is obviously the view of the toilet. Now, it's very small, and that should be looked at from the perspective of Oscar saying, look, I fired 4 shots through a closed door, which in fact was locked. And even if he didn't know it was locked, he knew he was firing into a very, very small area. So if somebody's on the other side of the door in a small area, it could be quite an important aspect with regard to certainly the lesser charges of culpable homicide as to what would a reasonable person have done, believing that there was an intruder in that toilet.